You've all seen how One Piece is usually written like this, but actually, that's not entirely accurate. Do you know why? Because whenever Oda-sensei himself writes One Piece, he always adds an X-shaped mark inside the O. And that's not just for style, I believe it's a major symbolic message in the story. Think about it. Luffy, the main character, has that X-shaped scar on his chest, carved into him by Sakazuki. Even in Chapter 1, Luffy's iconic pose with his arms crossed reflects the shape of an X. So this X mark keeps showing up, and it's clearly important. This mark is actually called Batsu in Japanese, and that name might be hiding a clue. It could be the key to exposing the biggest weakness in Imu's devil power. So in this video, I want to break that down in detail. This channel is run by a native Japanese speaker, that's me, and I break down One Piece from a Japanese perspective. Every week, I read both the Japanese and English versions of each new chapter, and I've noticed that a lot of crucial details and wordplay from Oda-sensei don't get fully translated. This channel's still pretty small compared to the big One Piece YouTubers, but I like to think of it as a sleeper stock in this market. I also share deeper breakdowns of the Japanese dialogue exclusively for Dusk Patreon members. So if you're curious about the differences between the original and the translated versions, definitely check out my page. Not to toot my own horn, but I think the content's pretty solid. All right, let's break down what this logo actually means. The combination of a circle and an X is something you'll see a lot in Japan. While most of the world uses certain symbols to represent correct and incorrect, in Japan it's a bit different. A circle means correct or right, and an X means wrong or incorrect. In the world of One Piece, that idea carries over. The world government is seen as justice, so it's symbolized by a circle. On the other hand, pirates are considered evil, which is why they're represented by an X. That's why the world government's flag prominently features circles, and when it comes to Imu, the highest authority, even the magic they use is channeled through circular magic circles. Now, if you look at pirates, they typically use skull and crossbones flags, where the bones are crossed into an X shape. Remember the scene in Alabasta where Luffy and the crew came up with a mark that only their group would recognize as a countermeasure to Bentham's fruit? Luffy suggested using an X. And his reason? Because we're pirates. In Japanese, that X mark is called Batsu, and here's where it gets interesting. Batsu also shares the same pronunciation as the kanji for punishment. So when Gol D. Roger was executed, it wasn't just a literal punishment. The way the scene was laid out visually also echoed that Batsu symbol. It's both a symbol of punishment and a visual X. One of the most striking things recently in the One Piece world is that Emeth, one of Joy Boy's original crewmates, has an X mark on his arm. And in some of my earlier videos, I talked about how the symbol of the world government seems to be this winged dragon, while the side of the ancient kingdom is represented by a snake-like dragon. If you think about it, Wano is currently ruled by Momonosuke, who is a snake-like dragon, and if you look back at Shandora, where they protected the poneglyph, the god they worshipped there also took the form of a serpent. Now, if you check the murals in Elbaf, you'll see what looks like a serpent-like creature clearly fighting against that same winged dragon. And here's the key detail. That serpent-like creature also has an X mark. Sure, in today's One Piece world, pirates are viewed as villains, so it makes sense that the X, the Batsu mark, gets used to symbolize them. But if we go back 900 years, there was no clear winner yet. Both sides had their own version of justice, and people were likely split down the middle in who they supported. So then, why was the X symbol already being used? Why did Emeth have it on him? Why was it showing up even back then, before pirates were labeled as evil? That got me thinking, Maybe that symbol is the ultimate weakness of the dark, godlike force Imu wields. Let's start by breaking down what exactly Imu's devil's power might be. The biggest clue we have is something called the abyss. A lot of the magic Imu uses seems to come through this abyss. In chapter 1150, for example, Imu creates translucent magic circles that allow them to freely summon weapons, even turning giants into demonic-looking forms. It's some pretty wild stuff. And it's not just Imu. The 5 elders and the gods' knights, who appear to share in Imu's power, can also travel great distances instantly, using the abyss as a sort of portal. Another interesting detail: every time we've seen someone with an undying body, they've appeared right after passing through the abyss. Now, here's something even more intriguing. Apparently, only people who bear a certain mark can pass through the abyss. We don't know exactly what this mark looks like, but it seems that anyone receiving the benefits of this black magic has to be marked in some way. So here's where my theory comes in. What if the X mark, the Batsu mark, is actually the counter to this black magic? What if it's the one symbol that can break or neutralize it? Harley mentions in the lore of the Second World that the forest god sent out Ma. In Japanese, the word Ma can have several meanings. It can refer to magic, or demonic forces, or just general supernatural energy. So if we interpret it as magic, it could mean that the power Imu uses today originally came from the Second World. And it gets more interesting. There's also a reference to the people of the moon in that same context. That strongly suggests that the Second World had a close connection with people who came from the moon. Now, if you look closely at the lunar cities in the One Piece world, you'll start to notice something. The X mark, or Batsu symbol, appears everywhere. That might mean this kind of dark magic originally came from the moon. The moon in One Piece wasn't always a dead wasteland. It used to be rich in nature and resources, maybe even like the Blue Planet. So what if there was a massive war on the moon, caused by the spread of this magic or advanced technology, and that's what turned it into the barren place it is now? In other words, what happened to the moon might be a glimpse of what could happen to the Blue Planet, if the use of ancient weapons and magic spirals out of control again. So the first time we ever clearly saw this kind of magic circle was back when Brook got sent to Namakura Island 2 years ago. The people there thought Brook appeared out of the magic circle, even though he didn't. But the important thing is that they called the ritual black magic, and they referred to Brook as a devil. That alone makes me think this ritual is a remnant of the same devil's power that Imu uses today. It's possible that, over 800 years ago, this magic wasn't something only the world government could use. Maybe it was widespread across the world back then. Now here's the crazy part. The villagers actually called Brook Demon King Satan, and if you look at the mural next to them, on the left side, there's a drawing of a demonic figure. That might actually be the original Demon King Satan they were referring to. And here's my theory. I think Brook, the guy they mistook for Satan, is actually the one who knows how to counter the power of the gods' knights using the X mark, the Batsu. Right now, we know that the character Gunko is under Imu's control, but there's a short flashback hinting that she once shared time with Brook in the past, before he even became a pirate. I think Oda-sensei gave us that little hint on purpose. It's a clue that Brook holds the key to understanding this devil's power. There's one weird thing Brook always does that might be more than just a gag. He keeps striking this pose, 45 degrees to the side. On the surface, it's kind of a silly joke. Not even that funny, honestly. It just works because of the party vibe when the crew's having fun. But the fact that he keeps doing it? I think there's a reason. If we take a closer look at Thriller Bark, we've learned a lot since then. Turns out the zombie soldiers were once part of the Rock's pirates. Sanji can literally ignite his own body, and there were actual zombies there, not just ones made with the shadow fruit. Thriller Bark started off as just a creepy man-made island, but now it's become a treasure trove of One Piece lore. And get this, the room where Moria and Kuma faced off? The structure is eerily similar to the Room of Authority in Maria Joie. That triangular decoration kinda looks familiar too. Maybe Thriller Bark was once a place where the world government's dark magic was used in the past. Here's something else that's pretty interesting. Earlier, I mentioned how in Japanese, a circle means correct and an X mark means incorrect. But there's also a symbol for something that's neither fully right nor wrong, something kind of in between. That's the triangle. And when you hear triangle, what comes to mind? The Florian Triangle. It makes you wonder, maybe what was lurking there wasn't tied to the world government or the D clan, but something neutral, something in the middle. So yeah, his 45-degree lean probably hints at a triangle too, but there's one more thing we should pay attention to. And the next time he pulled that gag was after he was mistaken for a devil on Namakura Island, and then taken to the island of the Long Arm tribe. It really makes me wonder, maybe Brook striking that 45-degree pose actually has some deeper connection to the devil, something more than just a running joke. The biggest clue, I think, is the cross. In our world, the cross is often seen as something that offers protection or wards off evil. We see it all the time in stories and movies. Crosses are used to repel demons or evil spirits. Remember when Brook first appeared in front of the Straw Hat crew? Usopp instinctively held up a cross at him, thinking he might be some kind of monster. And then, in Thriller Bark, there were crosses everywhere. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. If you tilt across 45 degrees, what do you get? An X, the Batsu mark. So here's my theory. Way back in ancient times, people may have used something that resembled the Batsu mark as a way to counteract black magic. And over the centuries, the memory of that symbol evolved into the modern-day cross, which is still seen as a way to fight off evil. Now, this next part is important. In chapter 1146, it was revealed that for some reason, Brook already knew about the God's Knights. That means there's a very strong chance he's actually fought them before. If that's true, then Brook has probably seen firsthand that the God's Knights can't be killed, that they have some kind of undead regenerating ability. And maybe during that fight, Brook got knocked around, ended up in that classic tilted 45 degrees pose of his, and that's when he noticed something. The God's Knights' regeneration had stopped, or something about them had clearly changed. And maybe, just maybe, he was wearing a cross necklace or had a cross design on his clothes. When he tilted sideways, that cross suddenly became a Batsu mark. And in that moment, the power granted to the God's Knights by Imu, that devilish magic, started to weaken. Brook might not fully understand the logic behind it, but he does know this. When he strikes that 45-degree angle pose, things tend to go in his favor. So maybe he started doing it as a kind of good luck charm, a weird gag with some serious hidden meaning behind it. In Thriller Bark, Brook figured out the zombie's weakness. And now, it's possible he's already discovered the weakness of the God's Knights too. And there's something else that really matters here. Brook's whole journey is about reuniting with Laboon, who's waiting for him at Reverse Mountain. Why is that important? Because if you look at Reverse Mountain from above, it actually forms the shape of an X, the Batsu mark. Now think about this. The world government chose to build Mary Joie at its current location, probably not just to overwrite the original land of the gods that used to be there, but maybe for another reason too, to get as far away as possible from Reverse Mountain. I think Imu, or whoever was calling the shots, didn't want their base anywhere near a place that reminded them of the Batsu, a symbol that might weaken or threaten their power. There's probably a deeper connection between Imu using a technique called Domi Reversi and the fact that this place is named Reverse Mountain. And if you want to go even deeper, the blue planet itself, the One Piece world, is marked by a massive X. The Grand Line and the Red Line intersect, creating a giant cross across the globe. What's interesting is that when Oda-san draws the planet, he often chooses to show the Red Line and Grand Line at a diagonal on purpose. That diagonal tilt makes the Batsu mark even clearer. Maybe he's trying to emphasize that mark, to show us that the X has real meaning. Now, take Tequila Wolf, that massive bridge the world government has been building for hundreds of years. Maybe it wasn't just about preparing for a sinking world. Maybe they're trying to redraw the map itself, erase the X, wipe out the Batsu mark from the planet. For someone like Imu, who uses demonic powers, the Batsu symbol might feel threatening, even dangerous. That's why they've probably spent centuries trying to erase it from the world. Even the world government's own symbol kind of looks like a distorted Batsu, like they rotated it, purified it with a magic circle, and made it safe. But maybe the real symbol they're afraid of is the original. Now, after everything we've talked about so far, you might be thinking, okay, so even if the Batsu mark is Imu's weakness, couldn't you just overcome Imu's powers by training your haki? And honestly, yeah, that's a valid point. We've already seen that when Joy Boy's haki activated, the 5 elders who were on Egghead reverted to their human forms and got pulled all the way back to Mary Joie. That proves that overwhelming haki can suppress Imu's dark powers. But I think Luffy is going to need more than just raw strength. He'll need to level up his haki specifically to counter this kind of magic. Look at what happened on Egghead. Even with the power of Nika, Luffy couldn't stop them from regenerating right away. On the other hand, when Gaban used his haki against Summers, that guy's regeneration was completely shut down, at least until Imu showed up. So yeah, just like many of you probably guessed, I think we're heading into a phase where Luffy has to learn a new type of haki, probably from Gaban, something specifically designed to fight back against this demonic power. And let's be real, Luffy's haki, while strong, still isn't on the same level as Shanks or Joy Boy yet, so he's definitely due for a power-up. And during that time, while Luffy's training, I believe something major is going to happen. That something is Imu taking over Vivi's body. Let's start by looking at this particular scene. Right before the Straw Hat crew enters Elbaf, Oda-sensei shows us something very curious. A new mark has been added to Luffy's photo in the newspaper. Specifically, an X has been drawn on it. Now, we don't know the full truth yet, but let's be honest. It's almost certain that Vivi is the one who drew it. Right now, Vivi can't go back to Alabasta, so the only real option left for her is to go to the one place that still feels like home, to the Straw Hats, who are like a second family to her. And let's face it, she's already been taken by the world government once without any clear reason, so at this point she probably has no hesitation about becoming a pirate. And here's another interesting detail. In that mural we saw, there's a symbol that looks just like the Alabasta royal flag, the one representing the Nefertari family. That raises a big question. Why would the Nefertari family, who were originally celestial dragons, be on the side of Nika and his allies? Whatever the reason, It's clear that Vivi has separated herself from Morgan's, whose views probably don't align with hers anymore, and she's trying to reunite with the Straw Hats. That X mark is likely her way of sending a message. The fact that Vivi is clearly included alongside the Straw Hats in the header of the official One Piece channel really suggests she's still considered one of them, and there's a good chance she'll be involved again in the story going forward. The Straw Hat crew was already concerned about Vivi after leaving Wano, so once they see this message, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go looking for her. Luffy's used the newspaper to send messages before, and Zoro managed to pick up on what he meant back then. So if they realize this is a message from Vivi, even the cold-hearted Green Mom, no, the Green Kaido himself, would probably agree to go help her. But as Dusk pointed out in another video, and this is the worst-case scenario, there's also the real possibility that by the time they notice Vivi's message, she might already have been captured by the world government. I really think there's a high chance that Vivi ends up getting captured by Mars. Here's why. Back in chapter 823, there's a line from Eiichiro that stood out. He says to Vivi, "What would you do if a Kaicho appeared and carried you off?" Now, here's the thing. That word he uses, Kaicho, meaning monster bird, is also often used when referring to a specific Japanese yokai called Itsumade, which just so happens to be the exact creature that Mars transforms into. Which means Eiichiro's uneasy prediction was actually spot on. Vivi may be flying around with Albatross Morgans now, but later on she might end up being taken by an actual Kaicho, Mars himself. The moment Imu hears about it, they'll probably head straight back to Mariajoie. That's how obsessed Imu is with Lily. It's gotten to the point where people are even making ridiculous memes about it. So yeah, it wouldn't be surprising at all if they prioritized Vivi, Lily's descendant, over ruling Elbaf. If that happens, just like with Gunko, Imu might literally end up sharing Vivi's body. Vivi would have her memories rewritten, just like Gunko did, and she'd become a puppet, a servant acting solely for Imu's will. That's where the X mark becomes really important. I believe that because Vivi has that X drawn on her arm, it prevents Imu from fully unleashing their demonic powers through her. The mark acts like a seal that holds them back. Naturally, once Imu realizes this, they'll try to erase the X from her arm. But when Luffy shows up to rescue her, when he finally stands right in front of her, I think there's going to be a turning point. Vivi will see something that brings her back to her senses. She'll see the X-shaped scar carved into Luffy's chest, a scar that can't be erased. That mark will weaken Imu's power, and even if Vivi is completely brainwashed, somewhere deep inside her, the meaning of that X will still remain. It won't have disappeared from her heart. And that's how it happens. That same X mark, the one meant to bind her, becomes the very thing that sets her free. Right now in Elbaf, Imu is flipping the giants, literally turning them over to the dark side. What really stands out is something one of the giants said. Dory got flipped, and now he's like a completely different person. That word, hikurikaisu, to flip or turn over, should sound familiar. It's the exact same word Roger used when he first met Rayleigh. How about we turn the world upside down? And it shows up again in Whitebeard's final words before his death. When someone finds that treasure, the whole world will be turned upside down. So when you put all this together, it kind of paints a bigger picture. Just like how the celestial dragons, the so-called gods, are actually at the top of a system rooted in evil, maybe finding the One Piece is about more than just treasure. Maybe it flips everything we thought we knew. It turns the world's values, history, and truths completely on their head. In other words, the world doesn't just change, it gets reversed. In fact, the concepts tied to the world government and those tied to the ones who inherit Joy Boy's will are completely opposite. Imu uses demonic powers, but Joy Boy had the power of the sun god. The 5 elders are named after stars, symbols of the night, but Joy Boy's side is all about bringing the dawn of the world. Imu rules the world through immortality, while Joy Boy and Roger died and chose to pass their will on to the next generation. The world government governs with black magic, while the ancient kingdom used science to advance their civilization. The world government represents justice, and pirates are seen as evil. Everything about these two sides is drawn in total contrast. Right now, Imu's side is seen as God, while the pirates and the D-clan, those who carry Joy Boy's will, are treated like the devils. So, in symbolic terms, the world government is the circle, representing what's right. Pirates and the D-clan are the X, the Batsu, representing what's wrong. But once the One Piece is found, all of that could be flipped. The meanings of right and wrong might be completely reversed. That said, Luffy's not the kind of person who gets caught up in ideas like good or evil. Remember when Shirahoshi asked him, "Does being a pirate mean you're a bad person?" His answer, "You decide." He left it up to the people to judge for themselves whether he was friend or foe. From that, it's pretty clear Luffy has no interest in fixing the pirate image or being seen as a hero. That's just not what drives him. More likely, Luffy's going to erase all of that, both the X and the circle, with a blank slate, like wiping it clean with white paint. He'll create a new era that's not bound by the old ideas of right or wrong at all. So that means maybe it was actually Joy Boy, the one who had Nika's power, who started the Void Century. Let's take a closer look at the Japanese phrase, Kuhaku no Hyakunen, the Void Century. The first character means empty, and the second means white. Put them together and you get Kuhaku, which means blank or void. So, in a way, the Void Century could be seen as the beginning of a completely blank white page, a fresh start with nothing written on it yet. And the biggest hint at this? Fukuboshi's words, "Straw hat, please. We don't need the past. Make it 0. That's what Luffy will do. Start the world over from 0.